As the last year of my channel has proven, I am a massive fan of the Pokemon trading card game. I love this game and everything surrounding it. The cards used for major competitive success are almost always coming from the main sets. This makes sense. Pokemon needs these cards to be readily available for anyone to jump in, build a deck, and play. However, I did say almost. There are a ton of cards exclusive to collection boxes and other products on store shelves. These are promo cards, referred to as Black Star promos. These are promos with black stars on them and feature a number denoting which promo it is. Many of these cards are either reprints of cards from other sets or bulk for collectors. But every so often, Pokemon will release a card that is competitively playable exclusively in collection boxes as a promo card. The latest example of this, Psyduck from Mega Evolutions, got me thinking about how many other promo cards saw competitive success. I started playing in the Brilliant Stars format, so I only have personal knowledge of that format and beyond. However, I don't have to determine success myself. I have results to back me up. Limitless TCG is a website that has an entire database of Pokemon cards and tournament results. By selecting every promo set from Black and White up, as I only want to deal with the modern era of the Pokemon TCG, and filtering cards by their deck list database, I could see the entire list of promos with Limitless pages. The downside is that this includes every promo, including reprints. So to limit it down more, I went through every card and jotted down the ones that only existed as promos, as it just doesn't seem right to include a card like Burning Darkness Charizard EX or Lost Origins Comfey, when yeah, these are promos, but are just reprints of cards from their respective sets. When I thought of this list originally, I figured it'd be around 20 or fewer cards. There are 61 cards to go over in this video. I'll be going in order by generation, which means I'll be starting with Black and White promos. And also I'll only be going over cards that did well in their respective standard formats. Oshawott is a basic water-type Pokemon with 60 HP and 2 attacks. For 1 colorless, Sleep Pulse flips a coin. If heads, the defending Pokemon is now asleep. For a water and a colorless, Surprise Attack does 30, flip a coin. If tails, this attack does nothing. This card appears in Black and White base set 3-pack blisters alongside the other Unovan starters. We're starting off strong as Oshawott has only 1 deck appearance in Jose Palomino's 4th place 2011 Worlds Reshiram Typhlosion deck. I honestly don't know why it's here. It evolves into a Hydro Pump Samurott that does 70 base, which I think is used for the mirror as it can one-hit KO Reshiram and Typhlosions without any water energies, but other than that, I'm not too sure. Litwick is a basic psychic Pokemon with 50 HP and 2 attacks. For 1 colorless, Call for Family searches your deck for a basic Pokemon and puts it on your bench. Shuffle your deck afterwards. For 1 psychic and 1 colorless, Will-O-Wisp does 20 damage. This card appears in Noble's Victory's 3-pack blister alongside Axew. Continuing the list strong, with this card also only having 1 limitless appearance in Cliff & Go's 14th place 2012 World's Chandelier Excelgor Lock deck. This Litwick is used as the optimal Litwick, as Call for Family is typically a very good attack to have on an evolving basic Pokemon. Nothing too special here. Tropical Beach is a stadium card that reads, once during each player's turn, that player may draw cards until they have 7 cards in their hand. If they do, that player's turn ends. This card was given out as a promo for attending the 2011 and 2012 World Championships. This is one of the most broken promo cards of all time. Ending your turn by drawing up to 7 cards is very strong. Allowing players to fix dead hands and prep more for upcoming turns is a broken ability, even with the downside of both players getting access to this very strong ability. The biggest issue with the card is the release of it. Being available exclusively at the World Championship gatekeeps this card heavily. For a card this strong, it only has around 25 appearances in Standard. Many of these deck lists from Worlds are playing 2 to 3 copies of this card that goes for around $500. Not to mention that this card is incredibly strong and still legal in the expanded format. Tropical Beach is easily the strongest promo ever printed, and caused Pokemon to quickly change the power level of the World's promos to never create an issue like this again. Champions Festival is a stadium that reads once during each player's turn. If that player has 6 or more Pokemon in play, they may heal 10 damage from each of their Pokemon. It was given out as a Worlds promo from 2013 to 2022. Remember how I said the Worlds promos were toned down? Well, I wasn't entirely wrong, I guess. Champions Festival is an okay card. Healing 10 from each Pokemon is certainly something, but it's not the most powerful effect in the world. Prior to 2023, it was mostly seen in control lists as a one-of. However, everyone's favorite Psychic-type bastard broke this card wide open, Gardevoir EX. When Gardevoir was first released, the deck's main attacker was Chilling Rain Gardevoir that did damage based off the amount of Psychic energy on the Pokemon. The Gardevoir only had 140 HP, meaning only 6 energies on it, with Gardevoir's ability putting damage counters on the other Gardevoir. If you don't play the game, this paragraph is going to get real confusing real quick. This capped the attack at 270 damage with an attachment per turn, not the 280 damage threshold many decks need to hit against the powerful V-Stars around the time. Mind you, this was before Monkey Dory came out and ruined the game. So, how do you heal just enough to add one more energy? Many players added Champions Festival. It healed just enough to allow one more energy attachment and swing for one-hit knockouts on V-Star Pokemon. This broke the deck. Many thought this card was a mandatory inclusion. The price peaked and many panic bought the card, until it was quickly replaced with a special energy in the very next set, Reversal Energy. Reversal Energy, when you're behind on prizes like Guardy like to be, would give you 3 of any energy type on non-rule box evolved Pokemon. That meant that one energy attachment, Gardevoir hit for 90 more damage. The need for healing Guardy for the extra damage was no longer necessary. This is exemplified by the fact that Moonlit Hill from Paldean Fates did nearly the same thing with an energy discard and saw little to no play. Champions Festival is one of my favorite stories from the Pokemon TCG, as it's a prime example of how speculation and fear-mongering will drive up the price and demand for a card that doesn't really deserve it. Even if Champions Festival isn't all that great, Pokemon were still scared that the Worlds promo would become super playable again and changed the promo for 2023 Worlds to be Paradise Resort, a stadium that reduces the retreat cost of Psyduck by 1, an effect that will always be terrible and too limiting to ever see serious competitive play. Ditto is a basic colorless Pokemon with 70 HP, 1 ability, and 1 attack. Its Metamorphosis Gene ability reads, if this Pokemon is your active Pokemon, it can use the attacks of your opponent's active Pokemon. You still need the necessary energy to use each attack. And its stick-on attack does 10 damage for 1 colorless energy, and you can attach a basic energy from your discard pile to this Pokemon. This card appears in a Primal Clash 3-pack blister. This card has 2 appearances in Espeon Garbodor from NAIC 2017 in Indianapolis. I believe it's mainly here to copy Trashulance from opposing Garbodors, but I could be wrong. A much easier card to discuss compared to the last 2. Regirock is a basic fighting Pokemon with 110 HP and 2 attacks. Landmaker, for a single fighting energy, puts 2 stadium cards from your discard pile into your hand. Stone Edge, for 3 fighting and a colorless, does 80 damage plus 40 more on a coin flip. Most importantly, it has the ancient trait Barrier that reads whenever your opponent plays a trainer card, excluding Pokemon tools or stadium cards, prevent all effects of that card done to this Pokemon. This card appears in a Roaring Skies 3-pack blister. That ancient trait is what makes this card good. Preventing cards like Lysander or Pokemon Catcher from bringing up your Pokemon for an easy knockout is super powerful. But that first attack is also pretty strong, shoveling back stuff like Tropical Beach or Silent Labs. While it only has 1 appearance in Standard and a 6th place Donphan list from 2015 Worlds in the Juniors Division, this card sees a lot of play in Expanded, primarily in wall stall strategies. Having a Pokemon your opponent can't gust in Doll Stall, or a way to bring back stadiums and normal wall decks, is a great combo to have. Sceptile EX is a basic grass Pokemon with 170 HP and 2 attacks. Agility for 1 grass does 20 damage, flip a coin if heads prevent all effects of attacks, including damage, done to this Pokemon during your opponent's next turn. Strong Slash for 3 grass energies does 130 damage, and that Pokemon cannot use Strong Slash during your next turn. This card came in the Sceptile EX tin. Back to another simple card. This Sceptile has 1 appearance in a Mega Sceptile deck at the 2016 World Championships, piloted by Fabian Pazol. The promo Sceptile is slightly better than the Ancient Origins Sceptile, so the deck played it instead. Flygon EX is a basic dragon Pokemon with 170 HP, 1 ability, and 1 attack. Voice of the Saiyans reads, once during your turn, before you attack, if this Pokemon is your active Pokemon, you may have your opponent switch out their active Pokemon with one of their bench Pokemon. And for a grass, 2 fighting, and a colorless, Spiral Buzz does 80, flip a coin until you get tails, this attack does 30 more damage for each heads. This card came in the Flygon EX box. This card saw play in Xerneas decks, as Xerneas does 30 for each type of Pokemon in play. This deck plays many supporting Pokemon of different types, like Hoopa EX, Shaman EX, and Flygon EX. Flygon is picked as the Dragon Rep as its ability, when combined with Floatstone, allows the Xerneas player a bit more gust than normal. Jirachi is a basic metal Pokemon with 60 HP and 2 attacks. Stardust for a single colorless does 10 damage and discards a special energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. If you do, prevent all effects of attacks, including damage done to this Pokemon during your opponent's next turn. For a metal and a colorless, Dream Dance does 20 damage and both active Pokemon are now asleep. This card was released in a breakthrough single pack blister. Weirdly enough, its companion blister just features a Hawlucha from Furious Fist, not even a new art or anything. Jirachi is amazing, Stardust being a single colorless energy that provides disruption and a wall for the following turn is super strong. This card saw lots of play as it was super splashable into many decks. It saw play in Xerneas, Mega Rayquaza, Vileplume, Drampa, Vespiquen. It's all play in all sorts of decks. Jirachi is easily one of the strongest promos of all time. So I'm working on the video. I have the playlist pulled up of like the footage that I'm using, says I know who to credit, and I don't. Tortoise family, different tortoises meet near water. Not really sure how this got in here, but you know what? Hell yeah. Tyrantrum EX is a 180 HP basic dragon Pokemon with 1 ability and 1 attack. Despotic Fangs reads, damage from this Pokemon's attack is not affected by any effects on your opponent's active Pokemon. And for a fighting, 2 metal and a colorless, Dragon Impact does 190 damage, discarding 3 energy attached to this Pokemon. This card was featured in the Tyrantrum EX box. This card was the main attacker in a niche deck around Bronzong and various dragon type attackers. Bronzong puts metal energy on one of the dragons, and double dragon energy fulfills the rest of the attack costs. It only has 2 limitless pages, but it looked like a cool deck. Aurorus EX is a 180 HP basic water Pokemon with 1 ability and 1 attack. Frozen Charm reads, each of your Pokemon that have any water energy attached to them can't be paralyzed. If any of those Pokemon are paralyzed, remove that special condition. And for 3 water and 1 colorless, Crystal Breath does 160. This Pokemon can't attack during your next turn. This card came in the Aurorus EX box. This saw a single use in Travis Nunless Water Toads deck at US Nationals 2016. I don't have a good answer as to why it was included. I don't remember too much of this format, and I couldn't tell you if there was a strong paralyzing Pokemon in format, so if anyone knows, let me know in the comments. Azelf is a basic psychic Pokemon with 70 HP and 2 attacks. Shining Eyes for a single psychic puts 2 damage counters on each of your opponent's Pokemon that have any damage counters on them already. For a psychic and 2 colorless, Mind Bend does 30 damage. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now confused. This card was in the Steam Siege 3-pack blister. It saw some play in Drampa Garbodor decks as a way to spread more damage to your opponent's Pokemon when combined with Team Magma's secret base. Shaymin EX is a basic grass Pokemon with 110 HP, 1 ability, and 1 attack. Aroma of Gratitude reads, once during your turn, before you attack, you may heal 20 damage from each of your bench Pokemon. For 1 grass and 2 colorless, Floral Gain does 60 damage, heals 20, and removes all special conditions from this Pokemon. This card was found in the Generations Elite Trainer box, and to my knowledge was the first promo in an ETB. This card saw light play in the Xerneas deck as the grass rep, and in a single Water Toads deck list. The biggest issue holding this card back is the existence of the other Shaymin EX. Since they have the same name, you can only play 4 total, so why would you get rid of one of your setup Shaymins for a heal one? The ability isn't bad at all, but it's not really worth it when you could play 3 of 4 of the setup Shaymin. Wobbuffet Break is a Break Evolution Pokemon with 140 HP and 1 attack. For 1 Psychic and 1 Colorless, Right Back At You reads, discard all energy attached to this Pokemon. During your opponent's next turn, if this Pokemon is damaged by an attack, even if it's knocked out, put damage counters on the attacking Pokemon equal to the damage done to this Pokemon. This card was found in the Break Evolution box, Ho-Oh and Lugia. To understand why this card was good, you gotta understand how Break Pokemon work. Break Pokemon were cards that were put on top of the original Pokemon. That Pokemon still had access to its original abilities and attacks, and gained some extra HP and an extra move or ability. Wobbuffet Break saw play because Wobbuffet saw play. Since Wobbuffet shut down all abilities of non-psychic Pokemon, it was a very powerful disruptive Pokemon that slowed your opponent down immensely. Some Wobbuffet focused decks opted to run Wobbuffet Break to give Wobbuffet a little extra HP and allow it to survive a bit longer. It didn't see too much play, but it was always an option. Beedrill EX is a basic grass Pokemon with 160 HP and 2 attacks. For 1 colorless, Double Scrapper discards up to 2 Pokemon tool cards attached to your opponent's Pokemon. For a grass and a colorless, Pin Missile reads, flip 4 coins. This attack does 40 damage times the number of heads. This card was found in the Mega Beedrill EX Premium Collection. This card was a staple in Decidueye Vileplume decks as a way to discard tool cards attached to Garbodor that would shut off Vileplume's ability. Also, Pin Missile, with enough luck, can actually provide some solid damage for the time, but I believe Double Scrapper is the main use of the card. Magearna is a basic metal Pokemon with 90 HP and 2 attacks. For 1 colorless, Entertain heals 40 damage from one of your bench Pokemon. For 1 metal, Prismatic Wave does 20 damage times the number of different types of Pokemon on your opponent's bench. This card was featured as a regular art in the 2016 Collector's Chest and as a full art in the Magearna Mythical Collection. This card has a few features in colorless or rainbow energy decks like Mega Ray, Drampa, and Gliscopod. This card was primarily a counter to Xerneas as it uses that deck's power against it while hitting for weakness. Salamence EX is a basic dragon Pokemon with 180 HP and 2 attacks. For 1 fire and 2 colorless, Beastly Fangs does 10 damage plus 50 more damage for each of your opponent's EX Pokemon. For a fire, water, and 2 colorless, Dragon Strike does 130 damage. This Pokemon can't use Dragon Strike next turn. This card was found in the Mega Salamence EX Premium Collection. This card appears in many decks that play fire or double dragon energy, as Beastly Fangs is a very efficient attack that can swing for big one-hit knockouts if your opponent plays a lot of EX Pokemon. This card mainly saw play in Volcanion, but also in Darkrai Dragons, Mega Rayquaza, and Mega Gardevoir. Karen is a supporter card that reads, each player shuffles all Pokemon in their discard pile into their deck. This card was found in the Battle Arena decks Rayquaza vs Keldeo. This is such a weird fluke of a card. It is 100% designed to be a counter to the very strong Night March archetype. Shuffling in all Pokemon on both sides ruins a deck that gets its power from Pokemon being in the discard pile. Here's the issue. The card was released September 21st, 2016. The 2016 standard rotation happened on September 2nd, 2016. That rotation got rid of the Phantom Forces set. Phantom Forces set had all of the Night March cards. There was never a time where Karen and Night March existed together. Instead, this card only saw niche play in decks that discarded a lot of Pokemon, or decks that wanted ways to recover Pokemon, like Mega Gardevoir, Metagross EX, or Alolan Ninetales GX. Where this card could see a lot more play in its intended way is the expanded format. With Regidrago V-Star being the best deck by a wide margin, one of the best counterplays is getting its dragon attackers out of the discard pile. Karen is a very good way to get dragons out of the discard pile and back into the deck. It's a shame Karen never saw its intended use, but it's still a good card nonetheless. Giratina is a basic psychic Pokemon with 130 HP, 1 ability, and 1 attack. Devour Light reads, each Pokemon break has no abilities. This includes abilities of its previous evolutions. For 2 Psychic and 2 Colorless, Shadow Claw does 110 damage and discards a random card from your opponent's hand. This card was featured in the Giratina 3-pack blister. Very clear purpose of this card. It's shutting off not only the break Pokemon's ability, but the ability of the Pokemon it evolved from was extremely powerful. It could shut off strong abilities like Bide Barricade Wobbuffet or Giant Water Shuriken Greninja, both very strong cards. Giratina saw play in many decks of all kinds as a tech card. Darkrai is a basic dark Pokemon with 110 HP and 2 attacks. For a dark and a colorless, Dark Cutter does 30 damage. For 2 darks and a colorless, Abyssal Sleep does 80 damage. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now asleep. Your opponent flips 2 coins instead of 1 between turns. If either of them is tails, that Pokemon is still asleep. This card was in the Volcanion Mythical Collection and the Mythical Collection Darkrai box. This card has 1 appearance in Yiwi-chan's Yveltal Garbodor deck from EUIC 2016. If you can set up Abyssal Sleep, it's a pretty solid attack, assuming you get lucky with coin flips. Snorlax GX is a basic 190 HP colorless Pokemon with 3 attacks. For 3 colorless, Collapse does 80 damage, this Pokemon is now asleep. For 5 colorless, Thunderous Snore does 180 damage, this attack can be used if the Pokemon's asleep. If it's not asleep, this attack does nothing. And for 5 colorless, Pulverizing Pancake GX does 210 damage, this Pokemon is now asleep. GX attacks can only be used once per game. This card was in the Snorlax GX box. This card only has 1 appearance in Vincent Marcus Monk's Yveltal Garbodor deck from OCIC 2017. I don't know why this card is included here, honestly. It's really bad, but it has a Limitless page, so I had to include it. Rockruff is a 60 HP basic fighting Pokemon with 2 very simple attacks. For a colorless, Tackle does 10 damage, and for a fighting and a colorless, Rock Throw does 30 damage. This card was found in a Sun and Moon base set single pack blister. Also worth noting that this card was in the Sun and Moon trainer kit Lycanroc half deck as well. Promo Rockruff was the main Rockruff that Lycanroc GX evolved from. Lycanroc GX provided a gusting effect when evolved into, and has 2 pretty solid attacks. This saw tons of play in Zoroark Lycanroc and Buzzwole Lycanroc decks. Why the promo over the Guardians Rising Rock'n'Roff? While Retreat Lock seems a way better on the surface, this format had a ton of switching and gusting with Guzma, so poking for 10 is a bit more relevant than Retreat Locking. Zygarde is a 130 HP basic fighting Pokemon with 2 attacks. Pulse Blast for a fighting and 2 colorless does 60 damage, and for 3 fighting and a colorless, Land's Wrath does 130 damage. This card was in the Zygarde Complete Form Pin Collection. It has only 1 feature in Gabriel Augusto's 2018 LAIC Lucario Buzzwole deck. I believe it's here as a single prize alt attacker, but other than that, I'm not so sure, as this is another instance of a bad card appearing only once. Lurantis is a Stage 1 Grass Pokemon with 100 HP, 1 ability, and 1 attack. It only took 23 cards, but we finally have a non-basic Pokemon to talk about. Sunny Day reads, the attack of your grass Pokemon and your fire Pokemon do 20 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon before applying weakness and resistance. And for 2 grass and a colorless, Solar Beam does 80 damage. This card was in the Guardians Rising single pack blister. This card mainly saw play in any grass deck that could fit it in for extra damage. Mainly Lurantis GX decks played it as it was a natural part of the evolution line. But decks like Golisopod, Alolan Executor Sceptile, and even Reshizard included the card. Tapu Koko is a basic lightning Pokemon with 110 HP and 2 attacks. For 2 colorless, Flying Flip does 20 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon, and for 2 lightning and a colorless, Electric Ball does 100 damage. This card was in tons of different products. SM30 was in the Tapu Koko figure collection and the Tapu Koko box. SM31 was in the Tapu Koko pin collection, and a shiny version of SM30 was in a Celestial Storm 3-pack blister. And there's a good reason this card got printed so much. It was fantastic. This might be the best promo ever released, easily a top 3 promo. Flying Flip is such a fantastic attack, especially in a format with double colorless energy. 20 damage to every Pokemon on your opponent's board for 1 energy attachment is super strong. Softening up Pokemon for later attacks or even taking knockouts on weaker Pokemon is insanely useful. And this card has one of the strongest attributes a card can have, free retreat. Tapu Koko is a great attacker and a great pivoter. If your deck played double colorless energy, there's almost zero reason to not play Tapu Koko. It's that good. It's also the face of many spread decks that did great in the formats Tapu Koko was legal in. Tapu Koko is the most extensive limitless page out of any of these promos, including so many different decks, archetypes, and 19 first place finishes. 4 of them being international and 1 world championship being in Zachary Baraki's 2017 Worlds winning Alolan Ninetales deck in the seniors division. This card still sees play as a staple in lightning type decks in the Gym Leader Challenge format. Tapu Koko promos 30 and 31 will go down in history as one of the strongest promos of all time, rivaled only by Tropical Beach and 2 towards the very end of the list. On to another Tapu that was really good. Tapu Lele is a basic psychic Pokemon with 110 HP and 2 attacks. For 1 psychic, Psywave does 20 damage times the amount of energies attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. For a psychic and a colorless, Magical Swap reads, move any number of damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon to their other Pokemon in any way you like. This card was featured in the other Celestial Storm 3-pack blister. Another really powerful promo, but not as good as Tapu Koko. This card was mainly used for Magical Swap. Spread decks love to be able to move around damage counters around the board. Radiant Alakazam and Sinister Hand Dusknoir are both amazing cards for this purpose. Magical Swap is Sinister Hand Dusknoir's ability as an attack on a basic Pokemon, which still makes it amazing. Psywave is also a pretty solid attack if your opponent has a lot of energies on their active. This card saw play in almost every spread deck that was big at the time, mostly because of Tapu Koko. Having 3 regional wins, Tapu Lele is another really strong promo. Mewtwo is a basic psychic Pokemon with 120 HP, 1 attack, and the ability Pressure. Pressure reads, as long as this Pokemon is your active Pokemon, your opponent's active Pokemon's attacks do 20 less damage. Super Psybolt does 100 damage for 3 psychic energies. This card was found in the Shining Legends pin collection, Mewtwo. Now for a card that saw significantly less play. Mewtwo saw a little play in Malamar decks as a solid 1-prize attacker and as a way to slow your opponent down a bit with some damage reduction when Mewtwo is in the active. Hell, Mewtwo might be a Tapu Koko counter as it reduces all of Tapu Koko's damage. Nothing too massive to see here. Pikachu is a 70 HP basic lightning Pokemon with 2 attacks. For 1 lightning, Thunder Wave flips a coin. If heads, your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. For a lightning and a colorless, Electro Ball does 50 damage. This card was released 3 times, at Target for the Sun and Moon launch event, in the Shining Legends pin collection Pikachu box, and in the Shining Legends Super Premium collection box. This card only has one appearance in Standard and Standard Wojix EUIC Heatmore Raichu deck as the optimal Pikachu to play, having 70 HP and the ability to paralyze on a coin flip. Shining Lugia is a basic 130 HP colorless Pokemon with 2 attacks. For 3 colorless, Argent Wing does 60 damage, and if your opponent's active Pokemon has an ability, it does 60 more damage. For 4 colorless, Aeroforce does 130, discard an energy from this Pokemon. This card was in the Shining Legends Super Premium Collection. Shining Lugia is the most interesting card so far, as it just sounds awful on the surface. 120 for 3 or 130 for 4? Why did so many decks play this card? Almost every Malamar, Rayquaza, and Reshizard deck played this card. It has a first place finish from a special event. The reason this card did so well is because it released in the perfect metagame for it to shine. Ning Lugia. Hoopa from Shining Legends has an ability that prevented damage from EX or GX Pokemon. Hoopa also had 120 HP. Shining Lugia could knock out Hoopa and was splashed into high energy acceleration decks as it only used colorless energy. Also, Shining Lugia having a fighting resistant made it a pretty efficient 2-hit attacker into fighting decks, mainly Buzzwole GX. Shining Lugia, while being complete bulk now, is a fantastic example of right place, right time. Solgaleo GX is a Stage 2 Metal Pokemon with 250 HP, 1 ability, and 2 attacks. Shining Main reads, your Pokemon in play have no weakness. For 2 colorless, Turbo Strike does 120 and attaches 2 basic energy cards from the discard pile to one of your bench Pokemon. Also for 2 colorless, Prominence GX heals all damage from all of your Pokemon. This card was in the Solgaleo GX box and the Hidden Fates Ultra Premium Collection. This card was a staple in Mew decks. Mewtwo and Mew GX have the ability Perfection that reads, this Pokemon can use the attacks of any Pokemon GX or Pokemon EX on your bench or in your discard pile. You still need the necessary energy to use each attack. This allows these Stage 2 Pokemon with all right attacks, but not worth it to play a Stage 2, to be useful, as Turbo Strike can be used from the discard pile turn 1. Solgaleo GX in combination with Mew is a world champion, being a card in Henry Brand's 2019 World Championships winning deck. However, it has some uses outside of Mew. It has one feature in the deck with the other Solgaleo GX, and it was used in the Gardevoir Swampert Ninetales deck, winning the Roanoke Regionals in 2018, where it was mostly used for its Shining Mane ability. While Solgaleo GX has a lot of wins under its belt, it is very much being held up by Mew's strength. Rockruff is a basic fighting Pokemon with 50 HP and 1 attack, Bite, which does 30 damage for 2 colorless. It is in a Forbidden Light single pack blister. It has one feature in a Zoroark Lycanroc Weavile deck from a Japanese Champions League tournament. This one is boring, and I debated not even showing it, so I'm moving on. Dawnwing's Necrozma is a basic Psychic Pokemon with 130 HP and 2 attacks. For 1 Psychic, Gulfstream does 20 damage, and if you have exactly 6 prize cards remaining, this attack does 20 more damage for each damage counter on this Pokemon. For 3 Psychic, Swords of Dawn does 130, discard 2 energies from this Pokemon. This card was in the Spring 2018 Collector's Chest and the Dawnwing's Necrozma Premium Collection. This card has only a few features in Psychic decks as a way to hit through Hoopa. Nothing too crazy on this one. Duskmane Necrozma is a basic Metal Pokemon with 130 HP and 2 attacks. For 1 Metal, Dusk Shot does 60 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon GX or EX Pokemon. And for 2 Metal and a colorless, Rusty Claws does 100 damage, and if your opponent has exactly 1 prize card remaining, this attack does 100 more damage. This card was also in the 2018's Collector's Chest and in the Dawnwing's Necrozma Premium Collection. This card saw play in Metal or Rainbow focused decks, primarily for its Dusk Shot attack to be able to snipe bench Pokemon to weaken for future plays. Combo Zacian especially played this card. If you can set it up too, Rusty Claws is a pretty strong attacker, able to close out games when the time is right. Alright, let's rapid fire these next few as they're all evolutions and all come from similar products, those being the special collection boxes for each evolution. Eevee GX only has a few deck appearances as the Eevee from Sun and Moon base outclassed it heavily. Ascension DNA is such a great ability, and Joymaker GX is super strong, but auto-evolving into the Pokemon of the energy type you attached is so much better. Flareon GX is my favorite of the three, as Heat Stage is a super strong energy accelerator. For 1 fire, 30 damage and attaching 3 fires from the hand any way you want is very powerful, so it saw some play in decks like Reshizard, Mew Mew, and Blacephalon. Jolteon GX saw the most success. With 3 strong attacks for little energy cost and free retreat, Jolteon GX saw a ton of play, being a staple in the Zapdos deck and seeing some play in Pikarom. It even has 2 first place finishes on its resume. From the best evolution to the worst one, Vaporeon GX isn't that amazing. Hydrating Drops is okay, Hydro Pump is Hydro Pump, and Cure Shower is okay, but kind of a mid GX attack. It only has 1 feature from a Korean League Glaceon Vaporeon deck. Very fun how all 3 of the original evolutions and EVGX got to have deck features, even though they're all super different from one another. Melemele GX is a Stage 1 Metal Pokemon with 220 HP, 1 ability, and 2 attacks. HeartGold says this Pokemon takes 30 less damage from attacks. For 4 colorless, Metal Blast does 110 plus 20 more for the amount of energy on this Pokemon. For 1 metal, Iron Force GX says attach any number of metal energy from the discard pile to this Pokemon. This card was featured in the Melemele GX box. It has 1 feature in Xander Perot's first place Naganadel box from DC Open Flight 2. I don't understand why it's here. It plays no metal, only 2 rainbows, and can only be evolved via Ditto Prism Star. I think it was a joke inclusion, but I don't know. Greninja GX is a Stage 2 Water Pokemon with 230 HP, 1 ability, and 2 attacks. Elusive Master allows once during your turn, before you attack, if this Pokemon is the last card in your hand, you may play it onto your bench. If you do, draw 3 cards. For 1 water and 1 colorless, Mist Slash does 130. This attack isn't affected by weakness, resistance, or any other effects on your opponent's active Pokemon. For 1 water, Dark Mist GX reads put 1 of your opponent's bench Pokemon and all cards attached into your opponent's hand. This card was found in the Detective Pikachu Greninja GX case file, which is why it looks the way it does. Being a Stage 2 Pokemon with a good main attack, this means that Mew Mew played the hell out of it. Greninja was in nearly every Mew Mew deck as a walls counter. 130 Shred for 1 rainbow and 1 colorless is very strong and very useful in a toolbox style deck. Also, Elusive Master could occasionally come into play, with the only non-Mew Mew appearance being a Blastoise Piplup deck for that ability. With 6 first places under its belt, Greninja GX is a very great promo. Trevenant and Dusknoir GX is a 270 HP basic Pokemon with 2 attacks because Tag Team is a stupid f***ing mechanic. For 3 Psychics, Nightwatch does 150 and choose 2 random cards from your opponent's hand. Your opponent reveals those cards and shuffles them into their deck. For a Psychic and a colorless, Pale Moon GX reads at the end of your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon will be knocked out. If this Pokemon has at least 1 extra Psychic energy attached to it, in addition to this attack cost, discard all energies from your opponent's active Pokemon. This card was found in the Pale Moon GX box. I actually want to talk more about the story of this card rather than the playability. For the playability, this card is fantastic. It was a staple in Mew Mew decks, and it's even fantastic in the extended format, still seeing play today. What I find interesting is the release of this card. This card was released in Japan in the Tag Team All-Stars set, a specialty set in Japan that released new tag teams and many new alt arts of previous cards. One of the new cards was Trevenant and Dusknoir GX. In Japan, Trevenant and Dusknoir GX got a regular art, a full art, a rainbow, and an alt art. Now, if this card was released nowadays, these cards would be in a specialty set released in January, with many other cards released in this set. However, this did not happen in the Sun and Moon era. Instead, just the regular art was released as a promo. The other 3 were never released internationally. And this was a brand new and powerful card that should have and normally would have been released in a normal set. Now, there's been many times that a base rarity of a card gets pulled and released as a promo. We'll go over that at the very end. But Trev Noir got pulled and none of the other cards got released. One of the strangest promos, and a promo out of a strange circumstance. Alolan Sandslash GX is a Stage 1 water Pokemon with 200 HP, 1 ability, and 2 attacks. Spiky Shield reads, if this Pokemon is your active Pokemon and is damaged by an opponent's attack, even if it's knocked out, put 3 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon. For 1 water and 2 colorless, Frost Breath does 120 damage. Also, for 1 water and 2 colorless, Spiky Storm GX does 100 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon that have any damage counters on it. This card appears in the Alolan Sandslash GX box. Alolan Sandslash has 1 deck appearance as the main attacker in a Frostmoth Sandslash spread deck for the Limitless Online series piloted by Troy Campbell. This deck uses Weezing and Roxing to spread damage to the opponent's Pokemon to set up for massive Spiky Storm GXs. Super cool deck, and one that only exists because of Alolan Sandslash. Aipom is a basic colorless Pokemon with 60 HP and 2 attacks. For 1 colorless, yank out discards random cards from your opponent's hand until they have 5 cards left in their hand. For 2 colorless, Tail Smash does 30, flip a coin, if tails, this attack does nothing. This card was in the Pikachu and Zekrom GX League Battle deck. Aipom is in Axel Averis' Zacian Lucario Melemele deck from the Limitless Invitational 2020 for its yank out attack. And to wrap up the largest section of promos, Sabrina and Bryson is a supporter that reads, search your deck for up to 2 basic energies, reveal them, and put them in your hand. Then shuffle your deck. When you play this card, you may discard 5 other cards from your hand. If you do, you may also search up to 3 Pokemon of different types in this way. This card was in the Trainer's Toolkit 2021 and has a deck feature in Lee Yuno's Zacian ADP deck from the Taiwan Regionals. I think it's here for the basic energy search, but this card kinda sucks, so I don't fully get it. A weak end to a strong series of promos. Sobble is a basic water Pokemon with 60 HP and 1 attack. For 1 water and a colorless, Bind does 20 damage and paralyzes on a coin flip. This card was in the Galar collection box. This card only has 1 deck appearance in Dewan Duran's Inteleon deck from Taiwan Regionals, as the Sobble used to evolve into Drizzile and Inteleon, both of which have the amazing Shady Dealings ability to find trader cards. Why this Sobble is used, I'm not really sure, especially since this is the worst Sobble, with the Rapid Strike Keep Calling Sobble or the 70 HP Sword and Shield base set one just being better, but oh well. Toxtricity V is a basic 210 HP lightning Pokemon with 2 attacks. For 1 colorless, Energize attaches a lightning energy from your discard pile to this Pokemon. For 2 lightning and a colorless, Venom Slap does 120, your opponent's active Pokemon is now poisoned. This card was found in the Toxtricity V box and the Galar Challengers tins. This card has 2 appearances in the Toxtricity VMAX deck as an alternative Toxtricity V. While being generally less powerful than the Rebel Clash Toxtricity, Energize can have its uses. Rayquaza is a basic 130 HP colorless Pokemon with 2 attacks. For 2 colorless, Jaw Lock does 30 damage. During your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon can't retreat. For 3 colorless, Power Blast does 120, discard an energy from this Pokemon. This card was in a Rebel Clash 3-pack blister. For the first time in this video, we hit a deck from when I was playing the game competitively. Rayquaza played a part in Adam Hawkins' NAIC 2022 Eldegoss Control deck. With Boss's Orders and Double Turbo Energy, Jawlock can retreat lock the active, typically support Pokemon like Crobat V or Lumineon V. Double Turbo makes its size Rayquaza's attacks do 20 less, so Jaw Lock only does 10 damage. Standard control stuff, but Rayquaza quickly got replaced by Block Lax and Tempting Trap Mawile. Another 2-for-1 special, these cards both appear in the same deck. Venusaur V is a basic grass Pokemon with 220 HP and 2 bad attacks. It was in the V battle deck Venusaur vs Blastoise, and it's here to evolve into Venusaur VMAX, who has 330 HP and 2 attacks. For 2 colorless, Forest Storm does 30 damage for each grass energy attached to all of your Pokemon. For 2 grass and 2 colorless, Gmax Bloom does 210, heal 30 damage from this Pokemon. This card was in the Venusaur VMAX Battle Box. This card was in Brian Meyer's Arctina deck from Portland Regionals. I believe it was mostly here to give this card a Limitless page before it rotated, as it's not very good and it's hardly included in the deck as a 1-1 line. Gmax Bloom is a decent wall attack, but it's still not that good. Single Strike Urshifu V is a basic fighting Pokemon with 220 HP and 2 attacks. For 1 fighting, Low Kick does 30, and for 4 fighting, Brawny Knuckles does 180. This attack isn't affected by resistance. This card was in the Single Strike Urshifu V box. This card only has 1 appearance in William Crawford's Single Strike Lugia deck from Hartford Regionals. It is mostly here to evolve into Urshifu VMAX, and the battle style's Urshifu is just better than this one, hence why it truly never saw play. Mewtwo V Union is the only successful example of the V Union mechanic. Once a game, if all 4 parts of the card are in the discard pile, you may bench Mewtwo V Union and use all 4 of its attacks. Union Gain, for a single colorless, attaches 2 psychic energies from the discard pile to this Pokemon. For 2 psychic and a colorless, Super Regeneration heals 200 damage, and for the same cost, Psysplosion places 16 damage counters any way you like. And for 3 psychic and a colorless, Final Burn does 300 damage. This Pokemon also has 310 HP and the Photon Barrier ability to prevent effects of attacks. It was in the Mewtwo V Union Special Collection. This card has 2 different decks it called home. First, it was a headliner of a control deck. Super Regeneration heals off so much damage that as long as Mewtwo took less than 200 damage, it could live forever. Combine Mewtwo with standard control cards like Crushing Hammer, Galao Mine, Miltank, and Yveltal, Mewtwo V Union was super strong and a super fun control deck. It even saw first place at the Toronto Regionals piloted by Piper Levine. However, with the release of Scarlet and Violet, Mewtwo V Union became a strong attacker when partnered with the Devil. Gardevoir Mewtwo was picked up as the strongest way to play Gardevoir originally. Refinement Curlia got the V Union pieces in the discard pile, and Psychic Embrace got Psychic Energies onto Mewtwo for either board-wiping Psysplosions or devastating Final Burns. This build saw 2 first-place finishes at EUIC, the Seniors Division, and at San Antonio Regionals. Mewtwo V Union is one of my favorite promo cards on the list, but how weird and gimmicky the mechanic was, it's not a shock that it fell off hard. Lucario V-Star is a V-Star fighting Pokemon with 220 HP and 2 attacks. For 1 fighting and 2 colorless, Fighting Knuckles does 120 damage. If your opponent's active Pokemon is a Pokemon V, this does 120 more damage. For 1 fighting and 1 colorless, Aura Star does 70 damage for each energy attached to all of your opponent's Pokemon. You cannot use more than 1 V-Star power per game. This card was found in the Lucario V-Star Premium Collection and in the Crown Zenith Elite Trainer box. Lucario has a few deck appearances in early Arceus V-Star decks, mainly here to one-hit knockout opposing Arceus V-Stars with Fighting Knuckles. This card was quickly outclassed by Hisuian Decidueye V-Star in the following set. Hisuian Decidueye had a better attack that was usable in more situations and quickly outclassed Lucario. There's a reason that 5 out of the 8 decks it appears in is before Astral Radiance's release. Deoxys V is a basic Psychic Pokemon with 210 HP and 2 attacks. For a Psychic and a colorless, Psychic does 30 plus 30 more damage for each energy attached to the opponent's active Pokemon. For 2 Psychic and a colorless, Power Edge does 140 damage. This card appears in the V Battle deck Zeraora vs Deoxys and the Deoxys VMAX and V-Star Battle Box. This card has 2 appearances from San Antonio Regionals, both in Gardevoir lists. ran by Edwin Aralo, and #1 Twitter rage baiter and this thing f***ing sucks when it's actually the coolest thing ever player, Jake Gearhart. This card is only here to evolve into Deoxys V-Star, a card which I will talk about later. Manaphy is a basic water Pokemon with 70 HP and 2 attacks. For 1 water, Pulling Currents has your opponent reveal their hand. Put up to 2 basic Pokemon you find there on your opponent's bench. For 1 water and a colorless, Aqua Bullet does 40 damage. This attack also does 20 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. This card was in a Silver Tempest 3-pack blister. Manaphy saw light play in Snorlax stall decks. Snorlax traps the Pokemon in the active spot and uses cards like Boss and Echoing Horn to get support Pokemon up there. With Manaphy, if the opponent has been keeping this Pokemon in their hands, it's possible to force them out. This card was quickly replaced by the supporter Erica's Invitation when 151 came out. Mimikyu EX is a basic Psychic Pokemon with 190 HP and 2 attacks. For 1 Psychic, Void Return does 30, you may switch this Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon. For a Psychic and 2 colorless, Energy Burst does 30 damage for each energy attached to both active Pokemon. This card was featured in the Mimikyu EX box as the first EX released in North America. This card saw niche play in, you guessed it, Gardevoir EX, but this time I have no idea why. This card is awful, and its Energy Burst attack is just a different version of Zacian V from Celebrations. Ampharos EX is a Stage 2 electric Pokemon with 2 attacks and 330 HP. For 1 Lightning, Electro Ball does 60 damage. For 1 Lightning and 2 colorless, Thunderstrike Tail does 140 damage, and you may discard 2 energies from this Pokemon to do 100 more damage. This card was in the Ampharos EX Battle deck. Ampharos saw niche play in some Miraidon Flaffy decks as a surprise attacker. With Flaffy's Dynamotor being the core engine of the deck and Ampharos EX evolving from that Flaffy, you could load up a Flaffy with energies and attack with Ampharos out of nowhere. While it only saw 2 regional level inclusions, I personally love Ampharos in the deck and I think it was the optimal way to play. Or maybe this is my love of Ampharos showing, who knows. Charmander is a basic fire Pokemon with 70 HP and 1 attack. For 2 fire, Ember does 40 damage and you discard an energy from the Charmander. This card was in the 151 poster collection. While this card has a ton of limitless entries, including 7 first place finishes, this card is heavily being held up by the strength of Charizard EX. Charizard EX is one of the strongest attackers of all time, and this Charmander has 70 HP, the perfect number to be Poffin searchable and not get one-hit KO'd by Dragapult. The only reason this doesn't see more play is because the Charmander from 151 has the exact same attributes. Blazing Destruction is okay, it can be useful, but you're not typically using it. All of this boils down to is which art do you like more, or which Charmander can you find and afford? Do you want 3 of the $1 card or 3 of the 15-cent card? This Charmander is the biggest example of a promo being fantastic solely because its evolutions is good. It even saw a regional inclusion as late as February of 2026 at Sydney Regionals. It's not bad per se, but it's not really anything. Shroodle is a basic colorless Pokemon with 50 HP and 2 attacks. For 1 colorless, Scratch does 10 damage. For 2 colorless, Toxic Teeth does 20 damage, and the opponent is now poisoned. This card was in the Grafaiai EX box. Another simple card, sure hoping nothing super meta-defining and one of the worst cards ever printed doesn't show up next. Shroodle was played in 2 different Goldengo to Dunsparce stacks from Monterey Regionals to evolve into Grafaiai. Grafaiai's colorful Graffiti was essentially Goldengo's attack on a 1-prize Pokemon for only 40 times instead of 50. I believe its inclusion was as a cornerstone counter. Honestly, it's a smart inclusion for the Energy Search Pro build of Goldengo. I like this one quite a bit. Pecharunt is a basic dark Pokemon with 80 HP, 1 ability, and 1 attack. Toxic Subjugation reads, as long as this Pokemon is in the active spot, put 5 more damage counters on your opponent's poison Pokemon during Pokemon Checkup. For 1 dark and 1 colorless, Poison Chain does 10 damage. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now poisoned. During their next turn, they cannot retreat. This card was in the Shrouded Fable Elite Trainer box and the Shrouded Fable 3-pack blister. This is one of my least favorite cards of all time. I hate this card and everything it represents. This card is the headliner of the Donk deck style, the style of deck that tries to win before your opponent can even play the game. Using Brute Bonnet's Toxic Powder ability plus Perilous Jungle, you can put 8 damage counters via poison on your opponent's Pokemon without them doing a thing. If you only start with 1 80 HP or less Pokemon, you lose! With Carmine and Secret Box, you turn half your deck upside down and will almost certainly find the cards you need, which isn't much. It's awful game design to allow one player to win before the other can even take a turn, especially in a format that was dominated by evolving basics. Losing without playing a single card is bullshit. But what if the opponent benches 2 Pokemon or has a Pokemon with more than 80 HP? Well, then the Donk player loses because their deck fucking sucks. That's the other issue with this archetype. It is god awful. Dedicating so many resources to getting the turn 1 win means everything else is pushed to the side. The 2 big Donk decks were Archralodon Donk and Roaring Moon Donk. Both terrible decks because they cut so much of their deck to have this bullshit Donk win. Watch any game of Poison Archralodon or Roaring Moon. If they do not get the win turn 1, they have no idea how to play the game. They sit there and watch their Pokemon get picked off one by one because they played a deck exclusively to win on turn 1. It is a deck for people who literally do not know how to play the game. There's only one deck who used the Poison archetype that was still good past turn 1, and that's Cloth Terapagos. Since it plays Terapagos, a Pokemon who wants a lot of Pokemon on the bench, Cloth, who gets stronger if it's Poison, and only 5 energies, 4 of them being double turbo energies for Terapagos and Cloth's attacks, Cloth's Terapagos was actually able to play the game quite well if it missed the turn 1 donk. It won EUIC 2025 in one of the most legendary moments, a moment that should have not existed because the game shouldn't be designed to win before your opponent can play a card. When I went to Milwaukee Regionals in May of 2025, I played against an Archralodon Donk deck as a Goldango player. He got the turn 1 Donk and proceeds to tell me how the deck is actually super complex and hard to play. That was my breaking point for this card. It's not hard to play. You look at half your cards, you draw what you need, and pray I get unlucky. So yeah, Petra is one of the strongest promos of all time, sure. It's also one of the worst cards of all time, and a card I pray the Pokemon Company never prints again. Anyways, Zacian EX is a basic metal Pokemon with 220 HP and 2 attacks. For 1 colorless, Steel Armament does 20 damage, search your deck for a basic metal energy and attach it to this Pokemon, then shuffle your deck. For 2 metal and a colorless, Slashing Strike does 210 damage. During your next turn, this Pokemon cannot use Slashing Strike. This card appears in the Slashing Legends tin. Zacian has 3 regional appearances, all of them in Goldango, all of them as cornerstone counters. Shout out Caleb Rogerson for getting all the way to 34th at the 2025 World Championships with this card. It's a pretty unique list for the time. And finally, the reason this video is made, Psyduck and Golduck. These Pokemon both have the ability Damp, which gets rid of all abilities that knock out the Pokemon using it. These cards were in the Mega Evolution 3-pack blisters, and is here to block Dusclops and Dusknoir's ability Curse Blast. Curse Blast has been a meta-defining ability with no counterplay until now. Turning these abilities off helps so many decks, especially one-prizers. It was unfortunate that these were limited to promos because so many decks needed this card, causing the price to jump up pretty high. Oh well. I'll just open up the newest set of Ascended Heroes in TCG Live because I can't get any physical packs, and ponder. Oh, it was reprinted in Ascended Heroes. Yeah, not all promos stay as promos. Between me starting and finishing this script, Psyduck got a reprint in the main set, causing the price to plummet. There's a handful of examples of promos not being exclusively promos that I want to rapid fire through. These are all cards that were initially promos, but got a reprint in a main set as a straight reprint or as an alternate art. This list includes Professor Brunette, originally being in the V-Union boxes, it saw a Trainer Gallery print in Silver Tempest, and saw play in Lugia V-Star. Leafeon V-Star, originally in the Leafeon V-Star box, it saw a reprint in Crown Zenith as a normal art and as a special Galarian Gallery print. It saw niche play in some Arceus decks. Zeraora V, VMAX, and V-Star. Originally in the V Battle deck, Zeraora vs Deoxys, and the Zeraora VMAX and V-Star battle boxes, Zeraora V, VMAX, and V-Star all saw reprints in Crown Zenith, with the V-Star and VMAXs also getting special arts in the Galarian Gallery. All were played in an Arceus Zeraora deck from Champions League Kyoto by Ryohei Miyamoto. Deoxys V-Star. Originally in the Deoxys VMAX and V-Star Battle Box, Deoxys V-Star saw a reprint in Crown Zenith's Galarian Gallery. Unlike its brother Zeraora, Deoxys did not see new regular prints, it only saw special prints. It was played in a Guardia list for its Psychic Javelin attack to snipe Pokemon V from the opponent's board. And to wrap things up, I also want to spotlight Pokemon whose base card was pulled from the set and made a promo, but the other arts appeared in the set, making it not originate as a promo. This list includes Xurkitree GX, pulled from Ultra Prism, Lucario GX, pulled from Forbidden Light, Galarian Sirfetch'd V, pulled from Vivid Voltage, Jolteon V, pulled from Evolving Skies, Dragonite V, pulled from Evolving Skies, Hoopa V, pulled from Fusion Strike, Virizion V, pulled from Astral Radiance, Hisuian Electrode V, pulled from Lost Origins, and my darling Tinkaton EX, pulled from Paldea Evolved. Alright, quick little unscripted thing, since multiple regionals have finished up since the scripting of this video has ended. We have two more promos to talk about. One of them is Cottony from Mega Evolutions. It has one list and it has one feature in a Goldango Limtown list from Seattle, Washington regionals. The other one is Celebratory Fanfare, which is actually a promo that's come out the Sun and Moon block back in Japan, and we finally just got it for the first time in the West, so it counts for this video now. It has a few Champions Leagues appearances. Both of these cards aren't very good or noteworthy, so they're being thrown in at the end. When this video originally came to mind, I did not expect this to be a massive rabbit hole of niche decks, meta definers, and so many weird one-off cards. Pokemon has been a lot better about not keeping strong meta cards as promos. There's a reason that after Sun and Moon, the list got much shorter and a lot less crazy. After looking at them all, Tapu Koko from Sun and Moon and Petrant from Scarlet and Violet are easily the two strongest promos ever printed. Psyduck would be on that list too if it didn't just get a reprint. I can't wait to see how quickly this list becomes outdated when Pokemon releases Mega Bidoof as a Worlds promo to only 3 people in the world.